Hello, everyone. I hope you guys can hear me well as we start today. Um, as we look into our time together. Sorry about a bit of the delays. First time using a live stream in regards to this first movie night that we're all here together for Monday Movie Club. I was made aware at our Doxa Gathering live stream that my sound and webcam on my computer isn't the greatest. So I invested. So I promise this is not a gaming stream. This is Monday Movie Club. But in order for you guys to just hear me a bit better and to have a better conversation, I invested in a little bit of tech. Thank you for coming on today. I have the chat open in a window so I can stay connected with you all as well as other things. As you can see, I have a bit of visuals, so it's not just my big head talking. And so welcome to our first Monday Movie Club night and live stream. You feel free to go into the chat and say hi to everybody. We're going to be having a bit of a discussion that will be centered on using chat. So if you are signed on to a Google account or a YouTube channel account, feel free to utilize the live chat. Like it said at the beginning on the poster, we are recording this for future views. Some of those who participate in Monday Club might not be able to come on right at this time on Monday nights or might be watching a couple hours later. And so what I wanted to do is make this available so that if they weren't able to come on Mondays, they can at least hear what we're discussing and be part of what's going on. So thanks so much for being part of this, and just letting you know that this is being recorded. And so just keep that all in mind. So what's tonight going to look like? Tonight is going to be me asking a few discussion questions in regards to the film we watched, kind of highlighting the questions that we went through maybe in our own homes that were attached to all of this with Zootopia, and then a couple new ones just to get our minds going. So in regards to all of this, we do assume you watched Zootopia. So if you're watching this, spoiler alert and warning in play. Feel free to talk about key points of the movie and all this other stuff. I know it's a little later, but even some people that might have not picked up this movie. So just be aware that you have been warned in regards to spoilers. Just also as a reminder, I'm going to be moving on to just a little bit of visual here. Just our guidelines that I kind of touched on in our announcement video, right? So in regards, we want to share about Monday Movie Club. We want this to be an aspect of ministry and community. Feel free to participate in the live chat at home with those you know, things along those lines, as well as be kind and loving. It's too easy for us in regards to just staring at a webcam or staring at a screen to allow kindness and love to kind of be backfashed. So just be mindful of all those things as we move forward. To kind of start off the discussion, I want to open it a little bit light. So my first question to the community of those who are watching tonight is, what is your go-to movie snack? What was maybe a snack that you had while you watched Zootopia this week? For me, it is close to Easter, and I have a very guilty pleasure treat, especially at Easter time, and I have some actually here with me, mini eggs. I am super about mini eggs at Easter time, and so with the help of my husband, but really just me, I've eaten almost a whole bag, like a big bag of these in about a week and a half. So when I was watching Zootopia this week, this was my go-to snack. Popcorn, very good and popular one. Chocolate pudding and peanut butter. My gosh, that's a great combo. Oh, I got to try that maybe for next time. So I'm just going to move my leg slightly because I realize I'm probably a little loud. Popcorn with butter and chocolate. Ooh, that's a good combo too. No judgment in regards to snacks. We are a loving community that just allows the old classics along with, a little twists and different things. So that's great. I'm glad you guys are enjoying yourselves and having a little bit of luxury when you're taking down these movies too. I like that most of these snacks are shareable. It's been a really great opportunity for that. So I'm going to jump in, something a little bit different in regards to when we look at Zootopia, but I wanted to look at, first question, in what district of Zootopia, if you were living in this universe, would you live in? The movie itself only touches on four kind of main ones. Downtown, which is kind of in the center, Sahara Square, which was kind of that where the chase scene happened in regards to uh, Weaselton, and Rainforest District, where we meet the Jaguar victim, and Tundra Town, of course, with the wonderful allusions to The Godfather, which unfortunately is not a movie we're probably going to be watching at the movie club, but it is a great old school reference. So what would be your, if you could live in a district? I kind of pulled up this map and saw that there was a bunch of different places that wasn't really explored in regards to this. Places like Savannah Central, Canyonlands, Meadowlands, Canal District, Marshlands. So what would be your go-to in regards for that? Rainforest District. I loved how they created that scene of the Rainforest District. It reminded me of like what I always imagined like jungle tree houses would look like. So that's a great one. Meadowlands, I'm super curious of what that would look like. Was that kind of like where Judy's family was? I'm not quite sure. I'm kind of a warm weather person, so for me, I'm probably staying away as far away from Tundra Town as possible because I like the warmer weather. So that's probably where I'm going to be at in regards to what my district would be if I had to pick one. So jumping into one of the questions that I had, yes, thank you, Nancy, for the wonderful themed joke there. It is pretty cool. Ice cold. What would be, who did you in the film relate to most in regards to character? Was it Judy or was it Nick? It's really interesting how these kind of two pair in the movie and kind of really influence each other. So I was really curious to see who people kind of relate more to when they think of this movie, of these two main characters. So who was your kind of more relatable of the main characters? Was it Judy or was it Nick? Yeah, thanks, Shar. Judy, Amy, Nick, Nancy, blindfully optimistic Judy, for sure. Uh, it's good to be not sure. I mean, I admire both characters in such unique ways. I like how realist Nick is, but I also appreciate the joy and just kind of like contagious optimism that Judy has in regards to it. Um, so just to answer Kyler's question, Command KV, we're just going to be talking about the movie in regards to things. There's some issues in regards to mass watching. There's certain platforms that allow that, like Netflix watching and watch parties and things along those lines. But we have to be very cautious about not breaking licensing or copyright agreements. And so we won't be taking advantage of actually watching movies together. It will be a kind of like a book club. Everyone goes out and reads or watches the movie ahead of time, and then we kind of get together and talk about our thoughts in regards to that movie. So it's just a way for us to honor a system and those who worked so hard putting these films together, all the people behind it, not just the actors and directors, but gaffers and lighting and tech and editing, and especially with things like Zootopia, the numerous amount of animators. And so I want to just be able to offer that kind of piece for them. So yeah, so just moving forward, I wanted to get your thoughts when the question of what does God say about how we treat each other and reading this question in Ephesians. I hope you guys had an opportunity to read it ahead of time. If not, I'll just read it now. In Ephesians 4, it says this: get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ forgave you. And so I really thought with Zootopia, there's a lot of different themings and conversations that we can have. But a major one that we can have is this idea of how we judge one another, or we have kind of these preconceived notions about other people. And what does God have to say about how we approach one another? And so when you kind of reflected on this passage and maybe what was presented in the movie, what were kind of some thoughts about the differences between kind of preconceived notions and what God says about each other? Kind of what my question was. I'll give a little space for thinking, because I know that was just a lot of talking all of a sudden. It's a great point, Amy. We should take care of each other, defend the weak. Definitely a quality that Judy has as a police officer, right? No case was too, what's the word I'm trying to look for? No case was too insignificant for her, which I really appreciated about that. I think also in Bible, when it talks about like caring for widows and orphans, like I feel like that's a lot of what Judy is about, like protecting the little guy. So that was pretty cool. Why do you think, question that I kind of reflected on was like, why was it so hard for Judy to be willing to trust predators and Nick, like, and things along those lines? That's just another question I'm going to throw out there while we have some people in the chat. It's a good point, Nancy, about how people present differently than what is going on. I know that, us Canadians, how are you? I'm fine. Fine's kind of the thing you say so that people don't ask the follow-up question. And so I think it's true that even on things like social media, especially right now with all of us in our own homes, but even just in person, we kind of do this thing where what's presented outwardly isn't always what's going on inwardly. Don't judge people, Deerfield. Don't judge people by how they look. Yeah, there's this theme of racism between predators and prey. But I even think it's about, like, yes, about how they looked and their race, but also about, like, the connotations of history, right, and legacy. Which is why I like that question about why was it so hard for Judy. Grew up with parents who never took risks, for sure. Like, that would definitely play into it. Be kind and compassionate. I'm just catching up with the chat. Sorry, guys. We should be kind and compassionate when things happen. We should forgive them. It's this hard line when something bad happens to us. We really just want it'd be easier to just cut out. But God's very clear. Like, we need to forgive each other and allow that forgiveness to take place. For sure. Why is it hard for us sometimes to be kind and compassionate and to forgive one another? It's a good point. Well, Charlene says that we need to act like these things, but what what holds us back from making that a regular thing? I know for me, I'll share while some of you might be typing. Uh, for me, it gets hard because the first thing we want to do is just, there's that fight or flight instinct, right? And I'm not a fighter. So for me, it'd be easier just to run away and avoid conflict. And so even the fact of like ignoring or allowing things to pass by is even more tempting sometimes than to be kind or compassionate. Puts us a bit on edge, puts us out of our comfort zone. But why do you think, why is it hard for us, either for yourself or just even us as a society, as Canadian society, as Western society, to be kind and compassionate and forgive as God forgives us? Amy, excellent point with the need for fairness, or the need for this idea of justice, that like if a wrong has happened, then something has to even that out. And yeah, human nature to look out for number one, to look out for ourselves, for sure. As you guys are thinking about this, I also want to open it up. What were maybe some thoughts that you had about the movie? What were some points of the movie that you found, either it was your first time watching and you were like, oh, that's super interesting, or you've watched it before and watching it for a second and third, in my case, because my child loves this movie and he calls it Rabbit Fox. He doesn't call it Zootopia because that's who's on the box. And we've watched it a million times, but every single time there's always kind of this like, oh, I didn't catch that before. So what's maybe, if you're not answering that first question about why is it hard to be kind and compassionate, maybe think about this. What was a moment in the movie that really surprised you or sticks out in your mind as really memorable? It's a good point as well, Charlene, for that idea of why is it hard to be kind, that fear of the unknown. What if we're rejected? What will happen? Kind of that self-preservation piece a little bit attached to that, right? So yeah, for sure. I'm just giving time for those who I keep seeing our watch number go in and out. And so I just want to reassure those who are coming on. I've just posed the question, what's a moment that is really, that really surprised you or was really memorable to you? And I'm just allowing people in the live chat to respond to questions. So it's not that nothing's happening. We're just giving space for people to type, because I know it could be a bit of a stickler in regards to typing. I know it takes me some time. Yeah, that's a great line. I agree. It's your word again. It's my word against yours, or it's your word against yours. Uh, I loved how it kept being called back throughout the movie, and I love that pen. I wish like that carrot pen existed. Maybe it does, and I'm not in the shop for it. Uh, yeah, it was an interesting twist at the end. Again, we've already done a spoiler alert for the beginning, but we'll do another one again now. At the end with the mayor and that twist of, you could kind of relate to what she said. It's recognizable, but we also, at least for me, like recognize the dangers for of where that goes to places of, we see that in our society with racism, or alienating those who are in rougher situations than us, those who suffer from addiction, those who suffer from you know, uh, other things. And so it's that, I agree. It's like you could see how she got there, but you could also see it's just like, yeah, that's where that kind of thinking goes. It's this kind of really dark road. Um, Judy's persistence of never giving up, and when she was trying out to become an officer. Yeah, there's a lot of moments, I think, in people's lives where you just like you constantly hit a wall, and it was neat to actually see her like literally hitting a wall. And then there's those people in your life that are just like, you fail, and there's no feeling and compassion behind it. It's just like, no, you're done. Like this drill sergeant, for sure. Um, One moment I always really like is kind of when Nick shifts from being like egging and irritating Judy on to like always see her in a different light. And like understanding that like, Judy had this kind of thing that's like predators can't be trusted because of bad experience and how I grew up and all this other stuff. But Nick also had this mentality of like, I can't trust her. And so I love that when they're on the Skytram overlooking everything. And that moment where he shares the story, but you could kind of see the shift in even his thinking of looking at people differently and realizing that he might have judged her a little too shortly. My son's favorite part, of course, is the sloths at the DMV. He thinks it's hilarious that they move slow. Again, he's 2, but it is a good moment. So yeah, for sure. So as we're talking about this idea of this movie really reminds us that we shouldn't judge one another, and we shouldn't, have this place of we need to be kind and compassionate and forgiving and kind of come to a place of understanding. I wanted to kind of like a think tank, like pose the idea, like what are examples of how we can in our context be kind and compassionate to one another. How can we share that kindness and compassion to one another? I'm thinking generally, but also like maybe even specific to what we're all experiencing right now with COVID and the pandemic. What are ways that we can express kindness, we can express compassion in this kind of really interesting season that we're all experiencing? I'll give you guys a few minutes to think and type, so feel free. Some really good answers coming in. I'm just going to read some coming off the chat. Seeing someone who's living on streets or homeless, or maybe just having a little bit rough, like go and get them food. Calling people, buying groceries for those who can't go out. Asking neighbors if they need something and picking it up for them. Groceries for elderly, for those who are alone. For sure. I think a lot of us are experiencing kind of people withdrawal from one another. And so even, that check in and say hi. Like, I've been calling a couple people every day, and, usually I don't do that, but because I'm kind of missing people, I'm doing it way more often now. And it comes from a place of not necessarily um, not necessarily they're alone or they have no friends, but even just I think all of us need a bit of attention. Um, if they have social media, having Zoom or Skype calls, absolutely. Um, I've been understanding, like, I'm an introvert. Some of you guys might be extroverts out there, and I live with two very extroverted boys, and since day one, I can just see how much of a struggle that is, that social and that just being around other people. Um, so like going on walks and not really leaving each other's side, but at least being able to see like another person is a huge win. I'm an introvert, and in my extroverted home, I joke a little bit with the guys that I live with my husband and my son, and say, you're sucking the fun out of it for your introverted wife. But in reality, like, even I'm kind of getting to a point as an introvert where I'm just like, yeah, I miss people. So it's good to have things like Zoom and things, even things like this movie club, and knowing that there's people in a live chat willing to talk about Zootopia with me is a really kind of encouraging thing. Um, Even just something that I saw on social media a couple days back, in regards to checking in with neighbors. There was a lady who had an elderly neighbor who lived next to her, and she didn't have her phone number or anything. So her family left her three pieces of colored paper: a red, a yellow, and a green, with instructions saying, tape these on your window that looks out to our window. Because I think their kitchen window looked into a window that had blinds on it on her house. And they just said, like, if something happens, like, green means you're okay, yellow means you're in a phone call, and red is you need to call somebody. Like, there was like an elevation of it. And so she's like, it's a really good thing in a way, if you can't call a person all the time, even just being able to look out the window and be like, they're okay. I thought that was a really creative way of making sure their neighbor was okay. But yeah, it was a really cool idea. Um, Meeting on groups like Bible studies and things. Need another human. Yeah. Um, I heard about. Yeah, the paper idea was good. Um, I'm doing way more live streams, like attending live streams and Zoom calls than I did before. And that just seems to be the kind thing. Um, I think also, like, some of us who go grocery shopping or have to go out and do errands or things like that, like, I know a lot of people were in rushes to get home and things like that. And I just enter a grocery store, and I just went grocery shopping the other day, and there was a lady with a cart, and she clearly was not just buying for herself, and she was mask, gloves, everything. Like, she was being very careful. And she kind of looked at me. She's like, I'm sorry, I'm taking up the whole aisle. And I'm like, I'm in no rush. You take as much time as you need. Like, we're all in this together. Um, and I think just being a little bit more gracious that way is a good way to show kindness and show that you love one another, right? And forgiving the person that, really needs a chocolate bar and so stands maybe a little too close. Or, not judging. Great movie. Not judging the person who is in a rush. Yeah, so just like reassuring people. Whenever I meet kind of a person who's considered an essential worker, grocery store clerk, mail, food delivery, my question is always like, how are you coping today? Because I feel like even just having someone you don't know checking in with you could be a really kind thing to do right now. That was another thought that kind of came to my mind as I was thinking about it right now. So I just wanted to I'm kind of aiming for these live streams not to be like a doxa gathering or like some of these other issues that go for like an hour or more, because it's mostly just, unfortunately, me talking into a camera and you guys texting. And so I just wanted to have a little bit of discussion like this, and then I have a final thought, and then we'll go and move on to next movie and next week and what that's all going to look like. So let me just jump on to my PowerPoint here and go to our next slide. I was kind of just thinking in regards to this idea of loving one another and understanding that when Jesus was asked what the greatest commandment was by religious leaders, he said, like, first is love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind, and the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And every law and all the prophets hang on these two main principles. And so I kind of, when we think about Zootopia, it's just like, us as Christian society, it's important that we just remember, whatever we do, are we loving God and are we loving others? Because if we're doing that, we're doing what God commands us to do. And so I want to encourage you who are watching now, who are watching later, continue to love one another. We're all in this together. Continue to show kindness. Continue to be compassionate. Look at people not with... Premix, our junior high missions retreat that I helped direct and host in November, we have this saying of have eyes of compassion, not of comparison. So instead of that judging aspect of how we see people, really kind of look at them and where they are and feel empathy, feel sympathy, feel love for that person. That, because if God loves all of us, they love me and you equally than others that we look at as well. And so even in that question of, do I have eyes of compassion or comparison in this moment, is a great way to check if we're doing kind of these commandments of, are we loving God and are we loving others? And I know there's a lot more theming to Zootopia and a lot more different things that we can talk about, but I felt like in order to keep this kind of down to half an hour, maybe a little bit longer, it was just a good way of just kind of centering our discussion today. So that's kind of my final thoughts today. I want to continue on and move forward. I think this was great. Thank you all who came tonight to watch. Thank you all who are, sorry, I hit my mic. Thank you all for those who are checking in after the fact and seeing what we discussed and how to be involved that way. I just want to kind of announce what next week's going to look like. So next week's movie, we are having a movie and we are going to be, I keep hitting the microphone. Sorry, this is new. Next week's movie is going to be The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I felt especially, it's Holy Week. We're gearing up for Good Friday and Easter Sunday. This is a movie originally by C.S. Lewis and really has that thought of Easter story in a more fantasy-like telling. And so this week, I encourage you and challenge you to rewatch or watch for the first time The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. I know it is streaming currently on Disney Plus, and it is available for rent here on YouTube, on Apple TV. It is also I'm not quite sure about Netflix. I wasn't able to check that in time. And if you've read the books, I just saw that, Deerfield. If you've read the books, maybe have discussions about what was different. What did they add? What did they take away? I'm always so fascinated with that when I read a book and then watch a movie. What gets cut in the editing? Really cool. And things along those lines. So I will post the 3 discussion questions I have in regards to this movie to kind of aid you in your discussion after it or your thoughts after it on Facebook and on Instagram. Like I did before, just search for the hashtag Monday Movie Club, like how you find this, the hashtag that I'm using for the title of this video. And we will come back here on Monday, Easter Monday at 7:30. So April 13th at 7:30. And we'll do this all over again. I'm pretty sure it's a fairly popular film. So if you don't have Disney Plus or anything else, there's a few free resources that you can utilize through public library services, such as Hoopla was one that I was turned to. Canopy was another. that allow you to watch films and movies that they have electronically through their services as well. So please feel free to check out your e-library, your electronic library resources as well. So Easter Monday, April 13th at 7:30 p.m. we'll meet back here and we'll have another discussion centered around the Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. Take a moment, share this video with someone that you might want to get involved in Monday Movie Club in the future. If not, that's great. In the comments below, if you're watching this now or even later, in the comments below, suggest a movie snack that we should try this week as we watch Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. I know that I'm all about the mini eggs, but I am more than happy to try something new. So feel free, suggest a movie snack in the comments below, and we will be happy to catch in soon. Thank you so much again for watching our first live stream. Thank you for all of you who've participated tonight. I'll even post the discussion questions in the live chat before I end this video. So when people are rewatching this, it might be available through that. If not, I'll make a comment even below with the discussion questions for Chronicles of Narnia and Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. So leave a comment below about your movie snacks. And if you're watching a movie and you're wondering what to eat, check out the comment list here and try something new along with the rest of us. Thank you again so much for wondering and watching and staying connected with one another. And know that this community is caring for you and praying for you, and just continue to stay connected as we get through this all together. Enjoy the movie, guys.